Hi guys, we're live at the Brojo again, and today I'm interviewing my good friend Daniel Andresen.
Thanks for getting the name right.
Yeah, and I'm starting to do these things where I live in a small town, but it's weird. There's a lot of really creative people in this small town that do side projects that aren't their normal job. So I'm here with Dan, and Dan is a artist.
Yes, I will happily take that designation. That I like to think I'd like to create art.
He does create. He's very humbling right now, but he does create really good artwork. Um, I'm still. Dan helped with the concept drawings for Lakeside Down Beatdown, and soon you'll be seeing artwork from Dan in broquest. He really had knocked it out. Jay's with me.
Yeah, he really did.
He
It
knocked
looks
it out.
fan-freaking-tastic.
Yeah, it looks awesome, Dan. Like we're not.
No, cool.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
humble.
Yeah.
Like this is
Yeah.
for real. Like I would never have imagined Steve from next door looking this badass
Yeah.
by how I played him.
Well, now that I've listened to the podcast, neither can I.
Oh, shit.
I'm just saying the one little description you gave of him
Does not
doesn't really
bring
portray
justice.
his grade average. Let's say that.
I mean, you can be really good
He
at
just needs
fighting
a chicken,
and
a
be dumb
turkey
as shit.
drumstick in
Yeah.
one hand, and he'll be good to go.
I mean, that's where I stand. Like he can be like, you can be dumb and still look badass.
You can.
There's Goku.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I made that analogy, and like, so I mean, who is Dan?
Well, I like to think that I try to find. I would say Dan's an unsuccessful artist, I guess, or
You've told me this numerous times.
I try to be creative when I can, and I don't. I would say I would not define myself in any fashion as a fine artist, in the sense that I don't kind of get the inspiration like I had a bad day, I need to paint. Like that's not me. And there are artists who do that, and they tend to be important. I tend to be someone who I like to call myself at times more of an illustrator or commercial artist, but like just throughout the different kinds of crafts I do. And I do this weird thing. I really actually hate the word creating, well, art forms. I kind of hate that word art forms because I think of most art forms as crafts. And I only make the distinction because I think that art to me is when you're really trying to express something personal. It is I had a bad day, I'm going to express myself with paint, where I am far more the guy who says, okay, my buddy Kien has a D&D group and he wants to see an illustration of those characters. And that's very structured, and that I can tackle. And maybe some of my feelings come into it, and that absolutely happens. But it's far more of a workman attitude, and I really take that into everything I do, whether it's writing stories or drawing, or when I do acting in theater. I'm not the guy who says I have to make I have to make a theater piece to express my political opinions. And there are artists who do that. But I'm more the guy that says, hey, what are we doing? Is somebody doing a student film? Is somebody, are we doing a play at the local playhouse? Great, I want to be involved in that. And certainly your own personal opinions about things play into it, hopefully in a constructive way where you say, I want to be a part of this because it pushes a message I like, or I'm not going to be a part of this because it pushes a message that I don't agree with. And so that's how I would, I guess, describe my artisticness.
See, and I think that's like I like the kind of artisticness you have. Like I remember when you were just like, I need someone to do some kind of project with. I'm like, I have a few ideas, and it was really fun just to bounce off these ideas with you because like you have obviously when we talk you have your idea, and like you're like, yeah, and you're able to tweak it, but you still keep your integrity in it. in your art that I've seen. Like I've seen.
Being open to working, I will say one of the biggest differences, it's funny you talk about that being open to the change, is that that fine artist, that guy who will just get that inspiration and sit down and divorce himself from his life and his family and his kids and write a novel in 3 weeks or a month and nobody knows where he is because he's just at the computer and on his own and in his own little world, or that guy who says I have to create this visual art. That isn't me. I thought that would be me when I was growing up. And if you had asked me who is Daniel Andresen, up until probably my early 20s, I would have said, oh, well, I'm going to be a comic book artist. And that's who I am. Because I was someone who didn't like being around other people. I was perfectly happy on a Saturday night to just be at my art desk drawing. And that changed. And we all change as we get older. And I didn't like that. I had kind of an opportunity to work with a company. I want to be very clear about this. I was at an anime convention in, I believe, 2000 at Disneyland. And I happened to meet a gentleman who was an artist at Radio Comics. And so he wasn't an editor, because kids out there, if you want to become a comic book artist, the artists are nice to talk to, but you got to talk to an editor. They're the ones that are going to hire you. They're the ones who are going to say, do this, don't draw like this. I met an artist there, but he was really enamored with my work, and he said, hey, if you really want to become a comic book artist, and he kind of gave me some parameters, and I was like, oh yeah, that would really work for me. And he's like, okay, well, go draw 5 pages of what you've kind of worked on, and I'm pretty sure we'll pick you up. And I went home, and I was like, okay, I need to be a professional about this. That means you sit at your desk for 8 hours, and you pump out a page a day. And I had vacation time, so I could get some serious work done, and I hated it. I hated being in my room by myself drawing. And I was like, I'm looking forward to, at the time my day job was McDonald's, because I was going back to college, and I was looking forward to going back to work at McDonald's rather than sitting at this desk drawing just by myself. So I'm not that guy who can just sit there by himself, and I need someone to bounce off of, even if it's, yeah, Dan, not your A game, even if that's what it is. For them to love it or dislike it, I need that. So that's something that you have to work with, and that's something that every artist needs to be able to do, is figure out what works. It's always the golden rule with your writing, your drawing, you're creating a character for a stage performance, which you've got to figure out what works and what can continually work. Because I'm playing a heroin addict, you don't go and do heroin. But there are actors who we've lost over the years from this kind of thing, and just saying you've got to figure out a way to be creative
and be happy.
And be, no,
okay,
not be happy.
Okay.
Because if you're really happy,
okay,
you're never. And I don't mean you have to be a miserable person, but you kind of can never, on a certain level, be satisfied.
No, I feel you.
That's understandable.
I got you. I have 100%. I feel that right now.
I would actually, he's totally unsatisfied with this interview.
No, I love this.
God, invited Dan over.
No.
Don't shut up.
No, that's what I love about you, though.
But I think a good example of this was and I feel really horrible, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I was at Comic-Con. In Sacramento, we have little comic conventions, and that's where I'm from originally, Sacramento. We have them like every 6 months. And there was a gentleman there, and I was actually going to look up his name before this interview, and I totally forgot to do it.
That's fine.
I know you think it's fine. But
it's going to eat you away, man.
Yeah. Not that the guy's going to be listening to this. But he was an inker for Ron Lim. Ron Lim did like a lot of like Silver Surfer and Infinity Gauntlet and all that.
Oh, nice. Cool.
And so it was one of his inkers I was talking to, and I hated taking classes. And this guy had drawn some comics, I believe, at that point, and was professionally inking. That's making it. When you're a high schooler, and I was in high school at the time, being published is the end-all, be-all, I'd kick a puppy to get this done. And he's achieved that. So this guy's much a rock star to me at that point as Jim Lee. And he he was talking about classes he was taking, and I was like, what? You're taking classes? Dude, you're published. What are you talking about? And he's like, you have to take classes. Everyone takes classes. Most artists continue their education on some way. And I think it's like a litmus test. If you're ever in a craft, maybe you have some natural ability at it, but if you're in a craft and you have just no interest in taking a class in it. I mean, I get it if the class is, how to draw a finger, and you can draw a finger and the class is $8,000. Yeah, fine. But if it's something that is in your art form that could help you, that could remind you of those basics that you start taking shortcuts on, and you have no interest, that's a bad sign. And the opposite, if you have interest, if you're like, you know what, like right now, I would absolutely go take an acting class. If Kara Gerlach, who's someone who's very active in our acting, in our theater community, was teaching a basic acting class. And I'm the recipient of, I've received some awards. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I've completed the acting curriculum course at the Santa Rosa Junior College in Santa Rosa, California. And so some people might say, well, why would you take a basic acting class? But yes, absolutely. When you love an art form, trying to hone your skills is something you always do. That's what real talent is. Real talent isn't the ability to just do something without any training, because normally if you dive in, they've had training. They've had training somehow, it wasn't specific to it. Like I knew a gentleman who picked up inking with a paintbrush like that. And I was like, how did he do that? He must be magical. And his control with his paintbrush was amazing. And it turns out that he'd been painting miniatures for years. So control with a paintbrush and getting that paintbrush to do what you wanted to do was something he'd already learned. It wasn't a magical ability. But if you love something and you're constantly thinking about how to get better at it, that's what talent is. It doesn't matter if you aren't as good as the guy next to you or the person that you really like. If you're doing that, if you're constantly getting better at what you're trying to constantly get better at what you do, that's your craft. Period. And don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough or you don't have this or that. There's room for you in your craft because we got room for the jerks who don't care.
When did you start artwork? Like, I mean...
Started artwork.
Seriously, like...
Doodling was always a thing. Stick figures, and that's why it cracks me up when people are like, I can't even do a stick figure. That's what you start doing. You start doing stick figures. And you keep working on it. And not to turn this into a sob story, but I know that a big, very cerebral encouragement was that I have dyslexia. And in the 80s, they didn't really know how to treat that. And I actually had some other issues, like I had problems with the muscles that connect my eyes, where they really had to work to stay in sync. And so tracking words when you're reading was very difficult. So I was going to high school really not having any reading ability. And so throughout my elementary years, I never could read. And so when you're a teacher, and I don't feel anger towards the teachers, but they were like, they didn't know what to do. Like, how do you teach someone who cannot read on any level? They can't comprehend something.
These were before those cognitive testings, like...
Yes, yeah. This is like we're talking the early 80s. Because I went to high school in 1990. So
Dan is old.
I'm old. I had to leave my walker at the front door. That's
I don't
where
allow that.
I
I don't like marks on my dojo.
No, it's nice in here, really. I mean, the marble floor, it's got to be the
Beautiful.
nicest little
I
apartment
love
in
it.
Spencer.
Like, I love the Belgian waffle wall, too.
Yeah, it is. And it's actually made of real Belgian waffles.
Yeah, so breakfast every day.
Every day, but there is a shelf life to his ceiling. He'll have to move out in about a month. So at any rate, they would tell me things like, you're gonna have to learn a trade. You're not going to college. You just aren't. And if I was dealing with a 10-year-old who could not read and there was no idea how to get him to read, you don't say, oh yeah, hard work, you'll make it. You're like, look, it's like, I want to be an Olympic runner. You have no legs. It's not going to happen. It's not being a jerk. Special Olympics.
It's being realistic.
Yeah.
It's being realistic.
So as a kid, like, art was, I kind of felt like that's what I was going to have to do. I was going to have to learn to draw. And I thought, well, or learn something. I mean, I didn't like the idea of wearing a hard hat my whole life, even though I've worn it plenty, worked construction, but, so that was the start of it, thinking I need to find something I'm good at that isn't going to be the traditional uh, uh, path. I'm not the guy who's going to get straight A's in high school and go to college. So I decided to try to draw, and that's really the start of it. And it really is interesting to go through those different dynamics where I'm so identified. If you said, "Who are you?" I'm Daniel Andresen, the would-be comic book artist. And when I realized I wasn't that was a really weird moment in my life. I'm just a tall, pudgy guy. So.
Do you have like? I mean, we wrote and worked out super awesome Lakeside Beatdown. Do you have like favorite projects? I know you showed me a vast portfolio, like amazingly advanced portfolio of stuff you've done, from Spawn Ramna to
What?
Susan Khan's poster. Like, do you have like one that you can always like you not brag but humble brag about to people when you talk about artwork and things like that?
That is tough. I don't know. That is a tough one. Just because far more in acting actually probably than my illustrations, simply because most of my illustrations are done, but they kind of never see the light of day. I mean, you show them to your friends, but I would say one of my favorite actually is that Kevin Rohan, who in addition to being part owner
of the Game State,
also has his own role-playing game line called Ether. And for an International S'mores Day, they put out a free monster, basically, called the S'more Monster, I believe. And it was a joke. It was supposed to be funny. It was there's this haunted campsite that they base a lot of their stuff on, and all the frustrations and sadness of that marshmallow that melts off your stick eventually congeal into this monster. And that was the S'more Monster that now hunts the grounds. And he didn't give me a ton of notice, and he was like, so it's for free, so there's, you're not going to have a big check to cash. But, it's something that's going to be out there and truly be published, and someone's going to look at it and they're going to run with that. And so I quickly sat down and drew it, and I had a very specific idea about having not a very comic book feel to it, but having that very, like, I think Bernie Rice was the artist who did a lot of horror stuff, and I really wanted that feel to it, and wanted it to feel uncomfortable. So, like, I made him really a blob, and I made his feet really, like, with twigs stuck to it, like a sticky marshmallow would. And that's something I'm pretty proud of, that it turned out uncomfortable and scary, and that's great to achieve that.
I really like that sketch. I really like that picture. It was.
I'll have to find it.
Yeah, cool. Hopefully he's putting it like up for the audience to look at right now. That's what I'm just saying. If it's not, it's because Kien's lazy. I'm throwing that guy down.
I have to find it then.
I will. It's at Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I will put that up, like, as that. Yeah. I will put that up.
You don't have to explain it now.
Yeah.
You can just tell me later.
Yeah.
It's fine.
That's the thing. You also brought up you wrote, and that was every time you brought this interesting story up. I'm really sad that it didn't work out. Is it still working out? The story that
the recycled story.
Yeah.
It might happen someday. I don't know. Recycled is a story that I started working on in high school, and it's kind of a great example of constantly coming back to it with something, and like feeling like you've written it. And it's a story that really has morphed over the years. I'm not ready to show its panties. I'm not ready to kind of say, because it is one of those things where you're like, there's going to be this big turn, and this is going to happen, and then we're going to realize Bruce Willis was really dead the whole time. And, you want to tell people this, but that's why you have to write it.
Yeah.
if anyone watched Californication, there's a line in it where Hank Moody is trying to convince his daughter to write. And he goes, look, if you have all these great stories, ideas, whatever, but to be a writer, you have to write. And that's so true, that you can have all these great ideas and stuff, but if you can't, getting it to fruition is really important to any form of satisfaction you can have as a creative person. So, I don't know if hopefully I'll get back to it. It's weird because it was very time sensitive when I created it.
Yeah, you told me about that.
That it was supposed to be something that started. There's a gap in it that has to happen, a 20-year gap between one part of the story and the second, and the feel of that first gap was very specific to the 70s, which really was a big key, a big way to get past a writer's block. A real way to turn those characters from paper dolls into real characters. Quentin Tarantino will talk about finding the song for his movie, even if he doesn't use it in the movie. And there is something to that of when you find that key into your creative project. And so changing it to where that beginning part just happened in the 70s, I just don't know if I can do that. Mm-hmm. And then you get into all the self-doubt. Like, is anyone going to care about a story like this in the 70s? You know, did you have to play up it's a 70s thing? Will I have to play Immigrant Song in all the trailers? You know, we'll just...
Are you calling out Thor?
My friend from work!
Are you calling out Thor right now?
I like Thor, but I think we all know that trailer does not look like that without Guardians of the Galaxy being what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
That movie is not advertised like that without James Gunn.
James
Gunn, yeah.
Okay, no, I get you on that. So we were talking about like art. Like, who do you have artists that do you have any creative people that inspire you?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, yeah. Illustration wise, Jim Lee work. And you kind of get into do I just love this because that's what was hot when I was younger? Because we all have that. I liked the band back in their early days. You know, we all do that. But Jim Lee, back around the time he first, like I would say, in the 90s, I thought his style had a real grittiness to it. And he also, to me, had a quality much akin to John Byrne, where I feel like he could do any story. I love artists that, like you couldn't do a light, fun, happy story about Superman saving the world and have it drawn by Mike Mignola. I love Mike Mignola, but he can't draw that story, and vice versa. I don't know if it's a good example of the opposite. You don't get someone like Rob Liefeld to do a story where everyone's supposed to be very realistically drawn. Like, and I don't mean that he couldn't. I don't mean that his drawings are just horrible. I just mean
they're not human.
Everyone's big and buff. Like he couldn't draw. He doesn't seem to gravitate towards drawing a normal human being. Like even the normal human being works out a lot. Yeah. Like in his world, gym memberships are free and compulsory. Like you have to go to the gym. Or you're even the fat guys are huge. Like, the fat dude can still. It's like the Blob could always lift shit. Like, why? He's just fat. As a pudgy dude myself, I say my fat never helped me lift anything.
It gives you leg strength.
No, it did because my legs are still lifting me.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, no, but if you're talking like these people have a shit ton of leg strength comparatively to your normies.
Yeah, I'm gonna say physics doesn't agree. I just think, yeah.
I mean, they're not gonna run fucking amazing, but if you get them on a leg press.
Holy crap! We can swear. Fuck! I was been missing this the whole time. No.
Oh, yeah, you could always
My kid's gonna listen to this. What are you doing? He's 8. He doesn't need to be exposed to this.
Speaking of your child, it's nice to have the fact that you're super creative.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's nice to know that you do that with your child. Like,
to share that or try to.
You're telling me.
It is. He's just as that dad who blew his knee out in high school and never was able to be in the NFL. My whole goal is to make Ronnie live out my dreams, whether he likes them or not. So no, it's not my plan. I want to encourage that, and I want to hopefully help guide him in ways of how to really get the most out of his creativity. Because crafts are crafts. There's actually a really common approach. I've kind of been lucky enough to get kind of educated in different approaches, or being creative in different crafts. And the fact that there's a lot of commonality in how you go about creating different things.
I really do though your creativity with your son, because you were telling me that role playing story, the armor cat story.
Oh yeah.
I think it's super cool to see that happen.
I think every parent should find their passion, try to share it, and it doesn't work with everything. My son could just not care about motorsports. Like I have tried to get him to watch racing with me at times, or get into stuff about my motorcycle, and he just doesn't care, and that's fine because he's
8
ungrateful. No, yeah, he's 8. But he is creative in finding where he's creative and how he wants to be creative. Like right now, he really wants to go write. He wants to be a video game creator. That's not my wheelhouse, but definitely I find that. Crafts are kind of crafts. For instance, when I draw, I will have an idea in my head, the parameters, like I'm drawing a D&D character, and I will sketch what I want to do, and I can be very free-form about the sketch. And if I'm like, oh, I don't like his arm here, I haven't spent 30 minutes on his arm, I can just erase it. And slowly whittling, almost like it's clay, whittling the detail out of it. And writing, I take a very similar approach. You don't sit there and say, okay, Bill walks in and says, what's going on in here? And then you take it from there. I don't do that. There's some writers who can do that, I guess. I can't. I've got to be like, who's the main characters? What's the plot line? Where are the turns? Just like sketching out a body or sketching out bodies in a drawing. And as an actor, you don't sit there and you're like, all right, I'm decided I'm just going to be this ex-military guy who's secretly an alien. Like, you say, I'm in this play and I'm playing a character and this is what I know about the character, and you whittle out the details. Then I think that's just the approach that you can take to anything. I'm sure if you were creating a video game, there's a similar approach. I'm not going to pretend to know enough about creating a video game to go through it all, but...
You should create a video game.
I should create a video game. I should go learn program. But creating a role playing game, because I do I don't do D&D. I do Vampire the Masquerade, and when I'm creating a storyline for a game, I kind of. I mean, that's a little different because you always have your players screwing it up, just screwing it up. But I find that I say, okay.
What? People screw up games?
No.
Well, it's expected that your players aren't going to go, because if you have the game, you don't want your players to feel like they're train tracked. You want them to explore it naturally and uncover it. That's
absolutely. And there's another correlation to actual acting, where in acting, a bad director will say, look, when you come in, you should be mad. That's bad acting. Just as it's kind of crappy as a I'm just going to GM, game master, for those of you who don't know. It's a generic term for the guy in charge. But if you as a game master, you're like, oh no, you have to go down this alley. That feels unnatural. But in acting, I wouldn't say you need to be madder. I'd be like, well, what just happened? And you might be like, well, she just slapped me. And you're cool with that? I guess so. Okay, and not telling them to be mad, but trying to make them find that raised stakes where they are very emotionally engaged. And because anger can look very different. Like anger can be, you can come in and yell and scream. You can come in and just stare. You can come in and roughly start doing things, slamming stuff around. And in role-playing games, if you really need them to go down that alley, trying to find the carrot to get them down that alley naturally is always more fun. And and lying to them. Lie to them. Tell them they didn't have to go down the alley. I do that all the time. I'm like, well, it's up to you. You don't have to go do this. In fact, it's probably it's reverse psychology. It'd probably be better if you didn't. You should not go down that alley. You will fuck up my story. Oh, you're going to go down the alley? You bastards.
Take note, Jay.
Will do.
Yeah. I've been gaming since the 90s.
No, I actually have a question. So, who is an artist or some other creator that you would love to work with eventually in the future, if you ever had the chance to?
Are we? It's. I mean, the answer is kind of everybody because I love working with people. But I mean, definitely there's people that I fantasize about working with. Let's just say celebrities, right? Because the opportunity of working with local creative people can happen.
I'm skipping away.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. In fact, I could. A lot of it would be work with Chad Elliott again. Chad Elliott, for the listeners, is a guy who comes from around here. He's an incredibly well-rounded, talented guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes music, and I will just say that I've gotten to work with him on stage a few times, and just insanely giving, insanely sweet. Just, if they're like, hey, he's gonna do a play, and you get to be the guy who walks in and delivers pizza, and that's it. I'm like, I'm there every night. Let's do this. I guess, I mean, obviously some of my biggest fans, I'm a huge fan of, let's say, Joss Whedon. I don't know if he and I would work well together, but I'm definitely a fan of his and would love to be a part of him. Another guy is a gentleman, kind of work with, like be in the room with, like maybe plot with, because then you're like, am I going to be good enough, right? Like, I get to work with Joss Whedon and have to, he'd be like, Dan, I know that you've done some acting, but your character's probably going to get killed off. What scene? The scene before your first scene. The scene, yeah, you're not. We're going to go a different direction with this. A direction that you're not in the project. Or to work with a guy named Terry Moore who did a comic book called Strangers in Paradise, which I highly recommend. If superheroes are heavy metal, Strangers in Paradise is like smooth jazz. It's this just awesome comic book that's just, it's really goes its own pace. It doesn't ever go for cheap thrills. It's kind of a drama. I mean, there are some kind of fantastic, I shouldn't say fantastical, I mean, it kind of gets into some weird crime syndicate stuff, but it's really just the drama of these characters and I don't think I could make it sound more boring, but it's really good.
It sounds, you have me hooked.
Yeah, it's about a girl named Kachu who's in love with a girl named Francine.
Okay.
Who really is looking for the white picket fence and the doctor guy. But it's a really wonderful story. And he's done other stuff. He did a really interesting thing that I haven't finished reading yet, Rachel Rising. He's working on something called Motor Girl right now, which looks almost like G-rated Tank Girl, kind of. I don't know. He's good stuff, and I've met him once at a Comic-Con, and it's an amazing experience. Just because he had written, he was doing sketches for people, just for free. Wasn't charging. Wasn't like $20 to have a picture with me or something. He was just, and the people who read his comics were a really great crowd. And I was like, oh, I don't have my sketchbook with me, and someone like yanked a backboard out of the comic and handed it to me. And he's like, well, who would you like? And I mentioned one of his characters, a character named David, who at this point in the publication, like obviously write and draw ahead, we knew a little bit about his background, and he was just a super nice guy in the story. And I asked for a sketch of him, and Terry Moore just got really sad. He was like, he has been through so much. And just he had so much empathy, this character where a lot of us are like, we're going to put the screws to the guy now. Like, I certainly have raked some of my characters over the coals and just, never been up at night like, oh, poor Casey, he's gone through so much, had to go hide. No, that's from recycled. But so yeah, I totally lost track what the original question was, but
Favorite artists.
artists I want to work. Yeah, those would be
yeah.
those would be some. I don't know of any visual artists I want to work with because only one guy can draw the damn comic book.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you on that.
Although I guess there's definitely artists I would love to draw my comic book. Terry Moore, because not only is he a great writer, I think he's a pretty darn good artist. I think Jim Lee's a pretty good artist, but right now he's busy running the New 52 or something. Travis Charris. I hope I'm saying his. You know who I'm talking about?
No.
Oh. Travis Charris. I hope I'm saying his name right. He did Wildcats for a while, and he is just an amazing artist. And I don't know if I'd have him draw my comic because his mood's a little like the mood that he conveys is something very quiet, serious, and my comic would probably have to be a little sillier, but. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know you can do silly.
I can't. Well, I think artists. I think something that people lose a lot of times is we think of great artists, but they've got to be on the right project.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm doing a fun whimsical story about a bunch of people working at 7-Eleven, I'm not hiring Frank Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you should. I want to see.
I mean,
that.
it could be. That could be the joke of it. It's like fries. You know,
I want to see.
Someone comes in demanding a refund, and they get their face smashed, and somehow the cops are on the take from the local McDonald's. I think we just came up with like the most brilliant thing ever, like a very serious, like almost crime story, but it's all about like this crooked McDonald's or crooked fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
But so, you know, yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like I said, I love having conversations with you. I know you'd be a really good first guest. What I also have a fear of now, because you did this so well, is that the next people I interview are going to just pale in comparison to.
Well, technically, I don't know. Like Will's will be like our
yeah, but I want to actually do a single one with Will. Will.
Getting a little competitive now.
Yeah.
So is Will cool? Will's cooler than me. Will's as cool as me. Whatever.
I mean, Will is my age, so I mean,
yeah.
He's got that going for him.
Anyone younger than me is cooler than me. I get that.
I'm like, but I do like I said, like Dan I will pop up the Dan's website and whoever else we reference. I mean.
It'll be my DeviantArt website.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to.
If you send me that link, like I said, I'll also put the Facebook for Game State, and I'll also put the Facebook for Chad Elliott, so you guys can also check those.
And Terry Moore. You should check
Moore.
out Terry Moore.
Google Terry Moore.
And Joss Whedon if you don't know who he is.
He's living under a rock.
No one knows who Joss Whedon. Yeah, who's Joss? Joss
yeah.
Whedon did this small thing called The Avengers. And
Yeah.
What's Buffy the Vampire Slayer again?
Firefly. Actually, he did Echo.
Yeah.
And so I get it if you don't know him from that, because 8 people watched it.
And you're one of them.
I'm one of them.
Thank you again for coming over, Dan. And
Sure. All right. I should leave now. I'll go. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.